I'll bet you never thought about what life would be like with a billionaire dad, huh? Well, I'm Fontaine, 33, and let me tell you, it's not the fairy tale version you dream up. My old man controls half the fancy coastline in the Carolinas. He makes big donations, and he wears a watch that costs as much as multiple houses. Yet on my wedding day, I shocked everyone by marrying a guy with grease under his nails. Can you believe it? My father did something awful at my reception. He stood right up and said I wouldn't be getting any inheritance or help from any trust funds. I could almost feel the jaws drop around the room. My hubby just gave Dad 4 words that shut him down completely. Most folks there hadn't any clue about the secret project I'd been working on alongside them. 6 months later, their confusion turned to shock as I revealed everything during one of my dad's major events. Now imagine a setup straight out of your favorite revenge plot. Hidden family revenge is what we call it, where those who ever doubted you will realize way too late exactly who they messed with, so drop a comment telling us where you're tuned in from, and make sure to subscribe. This show deserves all the views. So picture a long dining table that overlooks the coastline. That's where my dad held court at one of his fancy dinners. By that Thursday night, we both knew trouble was brewing. "We've arranged a Saturday meeting with Preston Vance," my dad began, still fixated on his plate. "The whole Vance business deal would go much smoother if we made a point to be seen together." I felt that familiar anxiety rise, so my hand automatically fiddled with the tiny brass calipers my grandfather taught me to keep close. A leftover gift from Walter slipped into my palm during our last goodbye. "Dad, I'm seeing someone," I shot back directly. The flicker in both parents' expressions told me I had their full attention. They wanted details, but I played coy. This led to another cold comment about our family needing to focus on strategy over feelings. Names weren't exchanged, yet the tension grew thicker with each bite of my uneaten meal. Afterwards, my father ordered an investigation. 3 days later, I faced him in his enormous office tower, which already dwarfed its visitors. All of Owen's info sat stacked neatly, but the analysis painted a disappointing picture. "This isn't what you throw away a huge business opportunity for, Fontaine," he stated stiffly, reading each item off with precision. "He's a good man. And owning moral virtue won't grow this family business." With that, my dad walked away towards the panoramic view. Little did he know, I had plans of my own to spring sometime very soon. Let me make this crystal clear: porters don't marry mechanics. I had heard that line before the day my dad refused to pay for my engineering degree, calling it a lurid little hobby for a porter daughter. I funded it myself through countless nights and weekend jobs, and built things with my own hands while my sister got a debut and a wardrobe paid for. "You taught me to build things, Dad," I said calmly. "Don't pretend to be surprised I built a life you disapproved of." He laughed once, a short, dry sound. What stuck with me was the odd thing in that folder. The investigator found nothing. 0 debts, 0 scandal, nothing to bring down a regular guy like my dad claimed Owen was. But for an average person, his background seemed too spotlessly clean. I couldn't figure out why then, but later. I first met Owen about 4 months prior, nowhere fancy. Work, that's where I truly felt myself. This old regional field hired my firm to examine their hangar. All morning, I crawled the trusses with just a flashlight and notebook. There's a buzz to a turbine spinning up a bay over, a deep, rising sound that shakes your chest before it reaches your ears. I loved it in a way others connect with music. A man in coveralls near the hangar doors caught my attention. His name tag said Tidewater. He was staring at me, measuring a corroded plate. "That plate's been fooling inspectors for 10 years, he commented. "So tell me what you see." And, when I explained, we ended up debating for 2 hours. He wasn't the usual type to just nod politely. We paid for coffee with cash from him at a rundown diner, avoiding the upscale cafe across the road. I saw pilots giving him respectful nods he shouldn't have gotten for a line mechanic. I didn't question it much, as we delved deep into the structure of what we checked. For those moments, the work seemed genuinely important. When he dropped me off that day, he stated, "I don't care whose daughter you are." It felt true. He popped the question right where we'd connected, in the hangar. Nothing fancy this time. He crafted the engagement ring himself on a lathe. Just simple titanium that wasn't perfectly joined but showed where he had rushed. Nervousness washed over him unlike any time I'd seen before. "I can't promise the lifestyle you were meant to have," he admitted. "But no, I'd never try to shrink who you are." I blurted yes even before he could get the last words out. Announcing our engagement to my side of the family? Total mistake. My sister Brooke broadcasted it within hours on Instagram, a quick caption alongside, "Bold choice, hoping love keeps the lights on," followed up with a laughing emoji. As for Preston Vance, my daddy's pick, he'd brag about dodging whatever this something was. Mom barely spoke until she cried down the phone. My dad? He remained calm when he phoned back, and that bothered me more than raising his voice would have. Offering to arrange a wedding if I wanted. I'll throw you a ceremony you won't soon forget. Another time, I wish I'd seen that threat lurking within his words. I didn't resist because I was happy, and when you're happy, you're more generous with those who perhaps don't deserve it. I shared what my dad had said with Owen, anticipating he'd be concerned. He just nodded slowly, similar to someone checking the weather before a trip they intend to take. Let him make his plans, Owen stated. We'll still be married at the end of it. His calmness should have shown me the kind of person I was marrying, but it didn't, yet. My mom showed up 2 days later, carrying a folder of bridal magazines and wearing a face for sorrow. Diane Porter knows sadness the way some women know contouring, with great care and fabulous lighting. As soon as she got here, she skipped right to, "Are you happy?" Actually, that's not true. She asked about people's reactions instead. "What will this do to us?" she queried, dabbing an unnecessary tear. My dad spent 30 years building his reputation, she reminded me, and I was destroying everything for a man who smelled like motor oil. Even saying motor oil irritated her. Yet that's exactly what I loved. The magazines were discarded like they offended her. "Don't make me pick, Fontaine," my mom begged. This phrase had followed me through life, suggesting she already chose and expected my apologies for recognizing it. Holding the brass calipers in my bag helped, my grandfather's tool, reminding me of Walter's wisdom. A measurement doesn't care how you feel. Me either. "You already made your choice a long time ago, Mom," I pointed out. Shock flashed across her expression before she shut it tight, just like slamming a drawer. "Never mind. What were you supposed to ensure?" I pressed. She acted like the question stung, replying the old man interrupted her words, then pausing abruptly. Whatever she planned to say vanished into thin air. "Don't worry, drop it." She cleaned up her supplies, ended the play, and departed. Stunned, I puzzled over her odd comment. "Walter requested your mother to promise something regarding me, yet my mom deemed me unworthy of learning it," the rejection bit harshly. In an unlikely spot, a fabric store, my credit card refused to pay for samples. Soon after, the family foundation cut my consulting fees, vanishing instantly. Dad ripped out every lead connected to him as swiftly as repossessing a vehicle under cover of night. It hurt that social acquaintances bowed silently. A brief, impersonal text came through. "So sorry, babe. Need to distance due to business ties." Reduced decades of friendships to one minor sentence, terminated with my dad's approval. Yet my father made a grave miscalculation. It mirrors errors many proud men commit. Restricting funds won't stop my momentum. I faced down worry in that store, raced home, and utilized Dad's rigorous training. On the kitchen table, I assessed expenses: lodging, food, savings, new jobs unrelated to the Porter name. Scared moments, but focus steadied me. Owen spotted my effort and gently offered financial help. I genuinely said no thanks. First I must stand alone. Then we'll face together what lies ahead. He accepted that, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder before leaving me space to persevere. They deactivated a credit card, yet underestimated my resolve. He never canceled my hands or my license, or rewired the brain I'd spent my whole life thinking was a useless decoration. We moved into a tiny clapboard house close to a field. The kind of place Mom would describe as charming while biting down hard on her tongue. It had great lighting, and a porch perfect for afternoon relaxation. Plus, the kitchen could barely fit 2 people who actually enjoyed each other's company. I adored that space more than anywhere I'd grown up in. But Owen was becoming a bit mysterious. He'd step outside on the porch for late calls, talking in hushed tones. Sometimes I'd overhear snippets that didn't sound mechanic-related at all. Like that time he said, "Push the maintenance window." Another time? "No, I'll handle the board. Don't loop in legal yet." A mechanic wouldn't use those terms. Yet, I held back from asking since we had this pact about earning each other's secrets, rather than demanding them. The next day, there on the table, was a trade magazine left by one of Owen's friends. It featured an article about some aviation company, with a reclusive founder dubbed a billionaire, still tinkering on his own. This guy, the enigmatic billionaire with a background in mechanics, fascinated me. His picture showed only a gloved hand working on a turbine blade. While it looked intriguing, I just flipped past it and made coffee. Owen leaned in the doorway then, looking at me intently, kind of hopeful and nervous at the same time. Later, he wanted so badly for me to understand his truth without him directly stating it. "Money's just a tool, Fawn. he whispered more to himself than me. Trust the man over his toolbox. I laughed and teased he sounded like a fortune cookie, but he only smiled weakly. In that moment, he had essentially told me the truth straight up, and I just failed to get it. Pause here. If you've ever felt judged by family over your choices, you get exactly how this goes. So many people have commented, asking if anyone's ever compared your worth to cash and found you lacking. Subscribe to see how this transforms completely, particularly when my father's real moment comes. Promise it's amazing. Back to it. Our plan was small, simple, have a chapel ceremony by the water, 50 seats, filled with actual loved ones. Yet we pulled up to a venue crowded with cars fancier than the chapel itself. Dad decided to gate-crash our modest gathering with 200 guests who definitely weren't invited. There was even a detailed seating chart he placed prominently on an easel. Owen got seated dead last beside the exit, marked with a handwritten guest, not groom. Guest. My father made sure everyone saw this display. Inside, the smell of pricey perfume lingered, along with thinly veiled disdain. Preston Vance, leaning casually by a pillar, sipped his drink and sized me up, eyeing me like he eyed deals. Mom was in dark clothes up front, while Brooke live-streamed the entire event. Running into Owen at the far end, I joked he seemed calmest there. When I mentioned my dad's flair for spectacle, Owen pointed out how my dad saved grand gestures for last. With a smile, I agreed it was us, pure and simple. Our vows sealed the deal, exactly as we promised each other. For just 90 seconds, the machine my dad built vanished, leaving only the two of us along with the tired, efficient background, and the water outside our restaurant window. Suddenly, I heard it, that sharp sound of a knife tapping against crystal. My dad got up from his seat at the head of the table, cleared his throat, and smiled, that knowing grin of a guy set on doing you a huge favor. He raised his glass and said, "A toast," causing everyone around to fall silent, 'cause that's the deal with gatherings like this. People hang on to whatever the boss man says. It was aimed particularly at me and her. His choice of words there really mattered. My dad continued, highlighting how he'd built everything we owned from scratch. A lone motel once belonging to his father. Every door earned, every dollar worked for, he stressed. With those proud words came one more beat, the announcement of who he approved of for his daughter. Looking around, he made it obvious he had doubts about Owen. In that toast, my dad declared any connection to Fontaine, that's what they called him, nullified, especially for inheritance purposes. Not a penny of Dad's hard-earned fortune, no part of anything that belonged to the family was to go to Owen. His exact words cut through the air like a knife. She is a mechanic's wife, and she may enjoy the life she has chosen. Everyone around started giggling and snapping photos, anticipating some drama. But here's the thing. I stayed stone cold. My mom, despite seeing my pain, remained quiet, the silent supporter in these situations. Dad kept his rant going, searching for a reaction, but all Owen did was rise slowly, put on his simple coat, and meet my dad's gaze without missing a beat. Owen tipped his head in acknowledgement for the speech, before calmly stating, "We don't need it." My dad expected tears or begging. Instead, he received those 4 words that sealed the moment in defiance. People whispered and shifted, uncomfortable with the tables having turned just briefly. Owen added dryly, "I rent a hangar, it's the best money I spend." He listed the respect and truth he offered my sister, things my dad clearly failed to notice. Among the fancy strangers sat a man who respected Owen, the CEO running the show, so to speak. That little gesture, meaningful only to those paying attention, highlighted the misplaced pride in what my dad saw as his legacy. For a split second, uncertainty flickered in Dad's eyes. It took just one person questioning the endless wealth parade to cause a minor tremor. In that instant, my dad reached for his predictable rebuttal. Porters don't marry mechanics. But Owen had already shown enough resolve in his quiet presence. This time, there was no condescension or mockery, just simple agreement. The room held its breath, waiting for more fireworks, but found none. With Owen's calm dismissal and genuine stance on honesty and dedication, even in Ping Fan de Yuyangi Shushichubi, Mian Xiong Fuza de Jigu, Shenke de Jeju Fancy. Everyone left wondering about the unspoken dynamics of power, and worth displayed through actions rather than boasts. "You'll get it, sir," he said. "Everyone eventually does." Then he sat by me again, grabbed my hand, and gave it a squeeze. Finally, I felt like the room belonged to us. My dad had his moment. Now it was my turn. And I didn't even need a glass or a knife. I just got up and faced the crowd my dad put together. I used to think a person's worth depends on what they inherit, I confessed. But no more. For 28 years I played by my dad's rules. I hit every school he wanted, forced that smile he valued, yet all he ever called it was a hobby. Some nights I paid for my own classes, learning skills that really mattered, things strong enough to endure any judgment. I met my mom's blank stare. What truly happened was I quit trying to fit into a family defined by pretenses. Over 100 folks started leaving. Upset, I wasn't making this a sad scene as planned. Yet more folks remained, way more than Dad bargained for. When folks act with dignity, others follow. Showing respect can spread where coldness fails. If you came here for misery, you're barking up the wrong tree, I told the room kindly. This party will carry on without those walkouts. Many of Dad's cronies still stuck around too. Do you feel the need to clarify or defend? Asked Owen. Just after our silly dance together, him chuckling because we were cracking some moves. Not one little bit, I replied. Especially not over the seating plan. Fair, he agreed. In time I'll share my story, the whole darn thing, Owen added thoughtfully. Or maybe I mean all of ours, he winked, adding, right now wouldn't make sense to you. After the ceremony music faded and that delicious cake disappeared, okay, mostly due to its yumminess, I had a fantastic night free from constant comparison. No scripts were needed. Neither of us predicted Owen would end up revealing our tale from a large stage in front of 500 curious eyes, while his father looked on critically from the very last row. Fast forward 2 weeks, a call from a total stranger, introducing herself as my lawyer. What did she want? That's how I found out my dad left me every ounce of his so-called grandstanding fortune. So guess what? I walked away from it all. It took a letter to explain why he actually chose to give it away. To a woman who barely knew me. But the message rang clear: some battles aren't worth the war, especially not ones built on admiration and pride. So here's tonight's dancing freely, with zero worries over lineups or losses. Just celebration and cake, lots and lots of cake. Her name was Ruth Maddox, and she represented my grandpa Walter for 30 years till he passed away. Walking into her office meant smelling old paper and lemon polish right away. Once she slid a thin file across the desk and said, "Your grandfather left some instructions." Inside the file was just one thing wrapped up in cloth, something I recognized before I even opened it. Those brass calipers, his good set, the ones I'd watched him use 1,000 times. There was also the letter he wrote in his neat draftsman's handwriting. 14 months before he went, he wrote this. Ruth mentioned softly. He asked your mom to give it to you. She gave it to me to keep sealed last spring, saying you shouldn't see it yet. The letter read that those items and everything else would be mine once I married for myself, not because my dad said to. I had triggered that condition 2 weeks prior. Those calipers meant more than I thought. They were a twin to the worn pair I owned. The letter also included info about a small structural components company my grandpa helped fund. They licensed the bracket design from when I was just an undergrad. Who knew back then how important that doodle really was? So this has been earning? I questioned Ruth. With a slight twitch of her mouth, she confirmed they'd been making cash for around 6 years. The deal was mine, an old machine shop and part ownership of this company. The money wasn't huge by my dad's standards, but it represented real freedom in my eyes. I could make a living doing what I loved, which apparently had been steadily putting bread on the table this whole time my family doubted my abilities. The news was shocking enough that I kept it to myself for a bit. Then I checked out the shop my grandpa left me, locked it up for years. As soon as I opened the door, the old smell hit me along with the memory of him. All his tools were right where he left them too. Curious, I called the company and spoke with someone who walked me through how much they made off the bracket I'd drawn up in class. Hearing those profits made me realize how long and quietly this work paid me. It didn't blow up like some fancy project might have, but it worked. Every damn day those designs held stuff up, keeping them sturdy and sound. Not a bad legacy at all. Telling Owen later that night felt good. Looks like you didn't exactly need saving, he noted, smiling that easy smile of his. Never did, I replied, realizing the truth of those words aloud. This quiet success had snuck up on me, and I thrived without needing anyone's permission or name drop to get there. Soon the whole trade world knew about the bridges and buildings that relied on that sketch. Dad tried keeping the business talk about it light at dinner, but failed to censor the papers from talking shop. Guess even he couldn't deny how proud he must have felt watching that progress play out. Porter Resorts was set to debut its most luxurious property up the coast, a billion-dollar investment banking on one key feature: direct jet service right to guests' suites. No terminals, no waiting around. This ultimate convenience depended on a sole player, Meridian Aviation Group. Every journalist had mentioned them, but no pics, no real descriptions, just rumors about their secretive chairman. My dad tried to seal the deal for almost 2 years, all virtual dealings with this shadowy figure. Days later, the contract should have been finalized, and if not, the resort would fall short of its extravagant pledge. That night, Owen came inside as an aircraft started its engine across the field. Its distinctive roar had always mesmerized me, but mixed with another snippet of info from my dad's recent talk, it left my brain fuzzy. Told him it was a long day. He replied with some work stuff, then changed topics. At that moment, I didn't put the bits together since handling the big picture gave me a headache. "So, how was your day?" he asked. "Just okay. Got a few routine jobs wrapped up," he said, hanging his keys by the door. One last contract drawing to a close, apparently. Same time, I noticed headlines my dad followed intensely on Aviation Partners. "Sounds interesting," I commented. "My dad keeps hitting walls with that." "Is that so?" Owen simply responded, refilling our glasses with water, clearly avoiding conflict. Since I couldn't grasp what it meant at first either, I backed off too. Flash forward a few weeks. The resort held its fancy launch. On that sunny Sunday, Owen pulled me aside. With 2 coffee mugs came the big reveal. "I have to spill something, sweets, big time." "What's that?" "The hangar's legit, I build planes for real. Truth is, I created an entire firm out of nothing." "You mean besides the repairs?" he continued, started modestly, got huge quick. Eventually, anonymity became my friend, 'cause folks can't handle eye-soaring wealth without sugarcoating it. "I guess your numbers scared off folks here too," referring to a glitzy editorial spread. "Some folks judge our small-town style based on opulence shown elsewhere." He looked away. Wanted someone who'd see through the act, treat me how I am. Then came the moment of truth. "Drop the act, Owen. Spill the name of this mystery empire." "Not today, dear. Just keep an eye on us soon. Trust the pieces will click when the night comes." So while my dad struggled sealing deals with a phantom, my potential hubby owned the very lifeline my resort relied on, all in secret. Mind equal to blown. He slipped his jacket, placing an envelope on the table between us. Heavy cream stock, embossed in gold, it held a grand opening invitation. The recipient, however, was no Porter Resorts rep, but an aviation partner my dad had been pleading with for 2 years. "I never lied about who I am," Owen whispered. "Just didn't give you my price tag." I didn't sleep that night. Listening to Owen's breathing, I struggled with numbers I had been avoiding. Finally, at 2 a.m., I got up, sat at the kitchen table, booted my laptop, and looked up the invitee's name. Every result mentioned Meridian Aviation Group, founder, chairman. The profiles read almost identically, highlighting his elusive nature. Private, reclusive, he still turns his own wrenches. One pic kept surfacing, a gloved hand on a turbine blade. Just a hand that had done the exact task many times in hangars smelling like home. In those coveralls that said Tidewater, I learned, was a Meridian subsidiary. The cash pouring in, pilots walking taller, because this man had a say no one else did. It hit me, of course it was him. The one my dad had courted endlessly without ever meeting the guy face to face. This powerhouse that had my dad begging from some porch, my husband held it. The realization brought quiet laughter, the kind where an unseen picture falls suddenly clear. My hubby. Bigwig of it all, my father the kneeling figure. Meanwhile, Preston plotted in the right circles, calling Owen a grease monkey who'd married up. But it was backward. Owen? Not the gold digger. Mom tried to save face, hinting if we came before the event, the press could maybe make this okay. Yet as always, the whirring of jets seemed like someone timing our minutes. "People are talking, Fontaine. It's not 'Are you happy?' It's not even 'I'm sorry I hid your grandfather's letter for a year.' Just people are talking and the cameras are rolling. They want me to clean up the mess before photos are taken." I held the phone, feeling that familiar pull. For 28 years I wished she'd choose me. This time, though, I could feel it loosening. Finally, I understood she couldn't make that choice. "I'll be at the opening, Mom," I said, "but not the way you think." She heard that as her daughter coming home and was satisfied. I let her believe that. Sometimes people only hear what suits them, and there's no point in correcting them before proof shows up. Here's the best part, no thanks to my husband. A few days after Mom's call, my firm got an email. The contractor for the main resort needed a structural engineer for a special glass room. My colleagues suggested me, unaware it was my father's project. So I checked the steel. Found issues with 2 parts I couldn't sign off on. These problems delayed the official opening of Dad's biggest attraction. See, he erased me once, but I held the key to that big event. My dad didn't pay a cent for my licensing. Yet here I was, needing nothing else to move forward. Now let's be clear on what happened next. I'm not trying to bargain or blackmail. No games, just doing the work the right way. Walter taught me this. I checked every detail meticulously and signed what passed muster. In my world, as an engineer, no building gives a hoot about your family issues. Not when its job is to keep people safe, perched high above the sea. I wouldn't walk into that gala as some comeback story. No, I entered there as the professional behind those critical calculations, the person who okayed the safety of the very structure they celebrated. My marriage to Owen barely flinched through all this. Still, the night before the opening we butted heads. He wanted to humiliate my father. There was anger there, frustration at being kept in the dark. Yet there was truth too. He acknowledged the line between self-protection and information management. We hashed it out, then decided no cheap shots. Our drama doesn't play out on his terms. The next day we showed up, did our bit, and that was that. No pointless hurt, that's what mattered. Knowing the structure could handle the weight was good. But so was the knowledge we didn't need to sink to lesser places for closure. We don't put on a big display about it. So what do? Well, I say, we just stop hiding. We let the truth stand tall in a room full of people and speak for itself. That's all it takes, really. It always has. He paused for a second, then turned the old calipers in his hands. Those were the ones I kept by my bedside. You know, Walter would have liked you tonight, he remarked. I echoed his thoughts but zeroed in on period, emphasizing that Walter would have liked him outright. See, Walter began as a mechanic too. Owen grinned at that, and the argument melted away into the night. Afterwards, I stayed awake for hours, visualizing my dad's face as the chairman, whom he'd courted for 2 whole years, stepped into the light. To myself, I resolved to handle the intense emotions coming my way without a fuss, because the person making the most noise usually ends up looking weak. The project looked like it was falling apart. Still, my dad deserved credit for something. They'd cleverly integrated it into the dune so it appeared to hover above. Plus there was my overwater pavilion glowing over the waves like a lantern. With 500 guests, including a governor and reporters dressed to the nines, there even was a chart on an easel by the door. But of course there had to be. My dad couldn't plan any get-together without indicating everyone's position. Similar to what I did at my wedding, I ran my eyes over it, and landed on a single line in the middle of the place cards. It read Chairman's Table, Meridian Aviation Group, and it featured 4 seats deliberately left open, waiting for someone my dad sincerely believed he'd eventually greet and dazzle. With a comforting touch on my back, Owen asked if I noticed how the valet finally let his husband through. Yet despite the taunt, Owen remained quiet, only offering a patient half-smile. Above, speakers filled the area with the programmed hum of a turbine, which I instantly recognized. Then, as expected, the master of ceremonies stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "tonight marks the very first instance the chairman of Meridian Aviation Group appears in person." My dad fixated on the stage, wearing the identical grin he flashed during business transactions. Meanwhile, Mom exclaimed in surprise and scanned the crowd for someone. Sure enough, she found us and said hello, using a fake name. My dad greeted Owen with barely hidden politeness, replying, "Fontaine, I'm glad you came to your senses." But then, as planned, Owen slipped his hand away and gave me an acknowledging glance before walking up onto the stage. I studied my dad's expression, a mixture of longing and hope stretching across his face. He genuinely looked like a man moments away from meeting someone capable of realizing his vision. The screens displayed his company name in crisp white letters, and as the sound of the engine reached its climax and faded away, the chairperson stood. Everyone held their breaths, and then, the expected anticlimax, as my dad noticed his spilled drink and the empty victoriousness in Mom's gaze. He visibly deflated. It wasn't defeat so much as resignation, the blood slowly draining from his features like water leaving a glass. Brooke put down her phone for once and simply stared. 500 folks jumped to their feet, cheering for the mystery man they'd never seen before. In the center of it all, my dad just froze, immobile. It was wild. While everyone raved, the only quiet one in that packed room was the daughter who'd barely existed for him. The MC leaned in, nearly whispering into the mic. "Please welcome the man who never shows his face." Then he introduced Owen, my guy, who walked up calmly, ready to address the group. As soon as he opened his mouth, Owen kept it short and professional. No mention of us whatsoever. It stung but made sense coming from him. When Owen finished talking, he left that stage and bam, the investors, some senator's helper, and even an editor went nuts trying to get to him. Yet my dad rushed over, practically yelling about sealing the big partnership deal. Hand outstretched, he gave Owen that familiar wide smile. "Hey there, I knew you'd fit right in." Owen just kinda stared at that offered hand, refusing to shake it. My dad pestered him about the partnership deal. They both acted like it meant something when it clearly didn't for Owen. Then he cut through the bull with, "I already said no." His point was cold and clear. Meridian won't be part of folks mistreating their family. Just look at those chairs sitting empty back there. There it was, the proof. With Owen not being a part of it, Dad's grand scheme didn't roll. All his plans to make millions fell apart because of this blunder. No one could board planes at a fancy airport that weren't built yet. Every single customer eagerly awaiting flights would have paid through the roof for tickets, yet thanks to Owen, there were none. He turned to my dad again, that same emotionless tone ringing clear. "Dad, you had your shot. You blew it by bragging instead of welcoming me." That's when Dad went nuclear. "How could you?" he hollered, pointing at me too. "Made a fool out of me, right here in front of everybody." I wanted to stay cool and collected. Staying silent sounded simple, until every eye landed on me. So I pulled out Grandpa's calipers, rubbed smooth after decades of use. In that dimly lit spot, they glinted up bright and true as I brought 'em up high for all to see. "Do you know what those are, Dad?" He just stared, confused. "They belong to Walters, your dad's, the guy who set up the whole machine shop where grease was part of the job description." His jaw clenched tight. "Porters don't marry mechanics," he once said at my wedding. I let the calipers turn slowly in my hand. The first porter that ever really counted was a mechanic. "You've spent your entire life pretending you aren't his son," I shot back. The room fell silent. A reporter got ready with their recorder. My mom, she paled. It was clear she was freaking terrified. Then came the kicker. "No inheritance for you." But I kept calm. Good. I wasn't gonna inherit from someone like him anyway. I'm gonna build a better future my way. And here's the zinger that left him speechless. "Listen, about the Overwater Pavilion being photographed tonight. It won't open legally without my engineering stamp, which I put on there this afternoon. Thanks a lot." Before his fancy PR crew could react, people were getting their cars. That silly clip from Brooke's wedding that she'd reposted just for fun was suddenly everywhere. Here's the groom's dad calling his son-in-law a grease monkey. But guess what? That grease monkey was the one with power. The sons-in-law needed signatures from these bigwigs. In less than an hour, 2 investors ditched the event, and one of them mumbled, "We'll need to revisit terms," as he walked past. The photographer had different orders. Owen found me by the window I'd worked on. He hadn't said anything snarky 'cause that wasn't his style. "You all right?" he asked. "Thinking about those 28 years? The excuses. The locked-away letters. And that room just for watching me fail. None of it mattered now." "I'm better than okay," I said, and meant it. It wasn't about the mess behind me. Leaning into him, I repeated those same 4 words he used in our vows. At the time, it was defensive, but now it was just plain true. Over the last 6 months, I'd figured out the real worth. My grandpa's 12%, the 6-year-old patent, earning money on its own, and my firm growing thanks to good work and word of mouth. All these made me independent, even before I knew Owen. My dad couldn't take any of that away because he'd never handed it to me. There's stuff we can't take back when we shouldn't have been given it in the first place. My mom tried talking to me before the party started. "Fontaine, honey, your dad, he's difficult. I wanted to stand up for you." But she didn't, 'cause she needed to protect herself too. "Mom," Ruth Maddox gave me Grandpa's letter, the sealed one she kept for a whole year, that workshop, the business, everything. To hide it from me 'cause it could have shown I didn't need her husband's thumbs up. She couldn't even find words for that. I looked right into her eyes and didn't shout. I'd promised myself I wouldn't. "You used to tell me not to make you choose." Well, here's one time you did. You picked the day to lock that letter away in a drawer. She had no lines for the moment, and for once she just kept quiet. That silence was probably the most truthful thing she'd done in ages. Then Brooke wandered over, mascara smeared, and to my shock the usual sneer was absent. "I didn't know about the letter," she said. "And I'm tired, Fawn. I've played the part of the good one for so long. I don't get what I'm like without that role. I hadn't heard her speak so genuinely before. The pull of wanting a sister whose reel was strong, but it was too late in the game to matter much. I believe you're tired, I told her softly. I'll even say I forgive you, but I won't repeat giving you the chance to use it against me. She nodded without arguing. Meanwhile, my dad learned in front of everyone what it truly means to confuse a price tag with a person's value. The resort's big opening got delayed and stripped of its luxurious gimmick. Suddenly, the super rich avoided it like the plague, opting for different spots along the coastline. So, Porter Resort stuck around, but barely. My dad might be moneybags and tough as nails, but he wasn't immune to the roughhousing of reality. Questions started flying at board meetings that my dad had never encountered. Answers were captured on tape, making things doubly rough. In spaces everywhere, the man known for never letting others have a peaceful moment struggled as rooms fell silent around him, yet not out of admiration. I focused on my work. We added more staff at my firm. The numbers grew week after week. Owen still spends weekend hours in the hangar, and when he walks through the door he brings the scent I fell in love with all those years ago. One night, as dusk set in, my dad arrived at our humble home alone. He didn't show off wealth or slick lines. Standing on the porch, he looked small, the smallest I'd ever seen him. "Can I?" he stuttered, his voice faltering. "Can I apologize?" Letting him wait a bit seemed fair. Not cruel, just honest. "What you need is gone," I replied calmly. "Long ago you couldn't offer it, so it's pointless now." He accepted this truth silently. "What I need now," I went on, "is for you to prove your commitment over actions for a change." He stared ahead, considering, then confessed he didn't know how to do that. Yet it felt like actual honesty for once. "Figure it out with your hands," I instructed slowly, "by mimicking how your own dad once showed you before you thought you were above that heritage." The encounter lacked any slamming door or eager welcoming. Instead, I left it up to interpretation, presenting straightforward terms for a future together. For him to play a role as a dad, and not underhandedly as some manipulative guardian. Things moved on at a measured pace. Letters from Mom got carefully worded, gauging out the right tone. Texts with Brooke became a small slice of everyday communication between folks trying to figure sisterhood without prying eyes. Brooke and my dad would stop by occasionally, finding peace in Walter's old shop while I worked. Slowly, they've begun asking questions about tools and jobs, but not for fixing someone, rather genuine curiosity about tasks. No magical fix and no grand scenes, that's the stuff of fantasies. This is better, because it's real, painstakingly building truth piece by careful piece. Repaired slowly by people willing to do the work with no one keeping a tab. These days you can find me most evenings in my grandfather's machine shop, the one my mom tried to keep from me, the one I had to marry a mechanic to get access to. Walter's brass calipers now hang above my bench. Both his and mine catch the last of the light. Owen's out in the field, but I can hear a jet spool up across the water, that low climbing whine that used to sound like music, then like a countdown, and now just means my hubby's coming home. My dad called me decorative, and my mom said I was a problem to manage. They didn't realize they were using the wrong measuring stick the entire time. Here's what I want you to remember: inheritance is what someone hands you, but worth comes from what you build when they don't. No one can ever disown something you create with your own hands. This is my story. A cancelled card, a borrowed hanger, a sealed letter, and a name I finally stopped needing. If you feel that your value wasn't decided by others, go and make something today with your own hands. Share this with someone who could use hearing it. Drop a comment below and let me know where you listen from, and remember to subscribe to Hidden Family Revenge. See ya in the next episode.